switching your bank or your pension is 21 times better at reducing carbon emissions than giving up flying, going vegetarian, and switching to a renewable energy provider. It's all about creating your network and tapping into that as much as possible and just being really, really hungry. If it's your own business, you can't shut off. You can't say, I'm done for the day. There's always more to do. And I think that will be the same for entrepreneurs across the globe.
Welcome back to Female Founder Stories, Women at the Top Told by a Teen. I'm Sia Kantari, and I'm taking you back through the scenes of entrepreneurship, hearing about the grit, the setbacks, and the breakthroughs it takes to build something real, told in a way that makes you think, I could do that too. Today's guest shows how geography and entrepreneurship connect, because money doesn't just shape our lives, it shapes the planet too. Lisa Stanley is a co-founder of Good with Money, a site helping people make financial choices that support the environment and society. And Zero, a sustainable money app that helps you track the climate impact of your spending. From living in Thailand to running businesses in Bristol, Lisa's work proves that where we put our money can decide the future of our planet. So Lisa, welcome to Female Founder Stories. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks, Dea, for having me.
So you didn't start out in sustainable finance. So what was the moment where you realized that you wanted to become an entrepreneur and build something of your own?
I think it was prompted by having children and the fact that a young child and a traditional 9 to 5 job doesn't necessarily correlate that well. So I was very lucky enough to be offered the opportunity to take on a family business at the time, which was stepping into the education sector, which I had zero experience in, but I had experience running teams, managing people, and I was thinking about, at the time, starting Good with Money. So those three issues kind of came together in a perfect storm, and I was lucky enough to be able to step out of the corporate world for a while, start my own business, and move into the family business, which paid the bills, because when you're starting up the early days of a business, you kind of need some way of making money and sustaining that as well.
Yeah, I've heard from so many founders about the real difficulty of starting your own business and having the cash flow in, because once you come out of your real 9 to 5 job, you're almost stuck, because starting your own business requires so much funding and investment and things like that. So that's so lucky that you had that family business to keep you afloat while you started Good with Money. So in terms of Good with Money, and even just the whole concept of sustainable finance, most people think about climate action in terms of recycling or like reduce, reuse, recycle and travel. And that's what we learn in geography at school, for example. So how can financial choices like where you save, invest and spend really make a difference for the planet?
There was actually some really fascinating research that was done a few years ago by an organisation set up by Richard Curtis, the filmmaker, called Make My Money Matter. Sadly, they are no longer around, but they conducted this research that showed that switching your bank or your pension is 21 times better at reducing carbon emissions than giving up flying, going vegetarian, and switching to a renewable energy provider.
Oh, wow. I would have never expected anything like that. And if we get to the real roots of this research, why is that? Why does money have a stronger impact than reducing your carbon emissions from vegetarianism and flying around the world? Because if I look at and even my peers and any teenagers listening to, if we look at the things that we're taught here in the news, all of it talks about the carbon aspect. I've never even heard of the financial aspect affecting climate. So why is that?
May not feel aligned with your own personal values, such as fossil fuel extraction, deforestation, palm oil, arms trade, tobacco industry, alcohol industry, all of those environmentally and less ethical sectors. So yeah, it's really important, and it's the forgotten industry, and people don't realize that money has that power and where you bank matters.
Wow, I didn't know that at all. But also linking this to kind of geoeconomics and politics. There's a lot of things that I've been reading in the news recently about how political decisions are now driving economics rather than money, and kind of linking this whole idea to government policy. Why aren't governments making kind of rules or putting in place laws that, I mean, if this is such a massive issue, bigger than all these other small things such as vegetarianism and stopping flying, why aren't governments, or why isn't anybody doing anything about it?
It comes down to a number of reasons. So one will be that the banks, obviously, those banks that I just mentioned, they contribute huge amounts in terms of taxes and income and to the economy as a whole. So the UK government, for example, wouldn't want to slap them on the wrist or change their policy in any way that was going to impact negatively on the UK economy. A number of other reasons that would obviously, if they were to starve capital to those banks and then to those, in turn, to those environmentally negative sectors, that again would impact on the global economy. So, these issues go way back. They're not necessarily easy to affect into policy that quickly. If you go back to COP15 or COP21 in 2015, there were a number of proposals made at that COP that governments and huge organisations committed to decarbonise. They haven't taken effect as much as people had hoped. And obviously, since, we've had 2 terms of Trump since then, and he is obviously having quite a significant impact on the global economy and sustainability as a whole, and people's understanding of climate change and how that relates to economics.
Right. So it's multiple factors, not just people not knowing, having no idea, the awareness, but also the fact that these banks who are investing in these unsustainable companies are boosting the global economy. So it's incredibly difficult for governments to put in place.
It is. It's all linked, and it would take a huge amount of work and many years to unpick. But the important thing is that, we all understand that climate change is real, is happening, and we need to do something about it. And starving off capital to those environmentally negative sectors needs to start happening. Otherwise, we will see increasing summers like the one we've just had.
You can really see the impact on the climate that everybody used to talk about in terms of extreme weather conditions and things, and you thought, oh, that would never happen here, and then you really see it. It's insane. And also, my mum was talking about the other day how apparently there was a news article talking about how the trees and birds and things, because it's still light and it's really warm, they don't know to migrate, and the leaves aren't falling off the trees, which can also have a massive negative impact. So everything is kind of a knock-on chain effect.
It is. And there's some interesting data just on birds and migration. I did some volunteering a couple of years ago at the Wetland Centre in Newport in Wales. I can't remember the exact stats, but something like the Canada geese population had declined by 50% in the last 10 years. Huge number, and that's due to climate change.
And now going back to your story of building these 2 businesses. So you've mentioned that you've made some instinctive decisions and you've had no regrets. So can you share a moment when following your gut really shaped your career or your business?
That's a really interesting question. I think that comment was a personal one for me. I don't believe that we have enough time on this earth to be able to regret things that we've done or not done. It's about moving forward and going with your gut. And if it feels right, you can make it right. I don't like to there's enough things to worry about in this world without me pondering, should I do that or this or whichever route. I'm not I think that is probably, a feeling that's developed over time. I'm not sure that I perhaps would have had such conviction in my instincts when I was your age, for example.
And You also lived abroad in Thailand for 4 years while working remotely. So what did that experience teach you about business or money, or even just how the culture even affected your business or the way that you thought about things?
It was fascinating. So my husband's a teacher and we were living on an international school campus in the middle of about 30 kilometers from a big city. So number one, the impacts of flooding and changes in the climate there were just really, really in your face. I can remember the infrastructure there is very different and managed very differently to the UK. So, for example, if people are doing work on the roads, there would be no kind of preemption of that. It would just suddenly happen. There's obviously a huge wealth gap in Thailand, just a number of things. But in fact, their fintech industry, for example, and their financial services industry is actually very developed. So, for example, we were there in 2019. You were already able to transfer money to someone via QR code. And the growth of super apps there, because obviously the Chinese influence and WeChat, things like that. Again, just technology, you move to somewhere like Thailand and you don't understand, or perhaps you have preconceived ideas. Actually, their 5G network was incredible. The technology developments that they have introduced way ahead of places like the UK on some areas. So pros and cons. Fantastic to experience a different culture. Particularly, I've got 2 young children. It's great for them. They've now got friends from across the world and have experienced life in a different country, which is something that we were keen to offer them.
I went to Vietnam recently as well, so very near Thailand, and I really saw some, like, in terms of technology, some incredible technology there. So we went to this man's house as part of like a food tour, and it was like one room. His house was one room, and yet he had like 5 or 6 phones. And my parents and I, we were in shock. We were like, "What do you mean he has 5 or 6 phones?" But that was just normal. And just even seeing how much culture affects geography was really interesting to me specifically, and I'm sure it affects entrepreneurship too.
Yeah, I think it does. Just the ability to understand how different cultures operate and different societies operate, and the respecting other cultures and how that plays out in business and entrepreneurship as well. But I definitely feel like the Thai people are incredibly entrepreneurial at all levels of society, and they're just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful people.
I couldn't agree more. And I also really think that this, again, I've said it in one of the other podcast interviews, but it links to like the entrepreneurial mindset, as you were saying. So all the Vietnamese people, when we went there, they have a love to learn. They have so much intellectual curiosity, and that they're really willing to work hard. And that's really what you need for entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. You can't build a business 9 to 5. So obviously I'm juggling 2 businesses and much of it is done in the morning before everyone else gets up, or on trains, or at night time. If it's your own business, you can't shut off. You can't say I'm done for the day. There's always more to do. And I think that would be the same for entrepreneurs across the globe.
And taking it back to now, the audience. And so most teens think about money in terms of like pocket money or birthday money, part-time jobs, or maybe saving up for something that they really want to buy. So what's one thing that you think that we as teens should know about money that would be either like a tool for impact or just something really useful that you think everybody should know?
Bringing it back to what we do at Zero and what I've built with Good with Money is that, and that conversation we had earlier, your money has power. So however much you've got, in my day, it was in a piggy bank. But, today on you might have a Revolut card. You could ask your parents to set up a zero account. Unfortunately, it's not available for the under 18s. But ask what your bank or your parents' bank, who they are, find out who they bank with, and ask what they are doing with the money that your parents or yourselves have got saved and invested with those financial institutions. And if it doesn't align with your own personal values, whatever they are, and, they may shape and develop over the course of your life, but, you may well be 15, 16 and have quite a strong view about social impact and your views of what's right and wrong, both for the planet and for society. And if those banks are not acting in your best interests, then you can change. It's really, really easy to change, to switch to a different financial services provider.
I think that's great advice for all teens. And one more question. So you are a very busy woman, as I can already tell. You're raising your kids, you've built businesses, and you're shaping a new way of thinking about money and really having a large social impact. So what does success look like to you now?
So in terms of Zero, obviously we launched in February this year. We've got almost 12,000 customers already, which is absolutely incredible. We would love to double that, triple that, quadruple that, so that we, this year to be able to get us in a position and start to be able to compete with the likes of Monzo and Starling and Revolut. In terms with Good With Money, it's much more of a business where we need to grow our audience. So, and find a new way to deliver the content that we've always delivered. So obviously, since we set up Good With Money, everything has moved onto a mobile. We set it up as a website, which is, it's a mobile friendly website, but our next move is moving into an app. And then personal success, obviously, my eldest son is 14. He's just going into year 10, starting his GCSE course. I hope that I can imbue him and my other son with, a sense of can do, enthusiasm and a positive attitude, and just the kind of will to keep trying new things and stay positive and never sort of think that, oh, why shouldn't I have a go at that? There's nothing stopping me. Try and be prepared to fail.
I think that's great advice for everyone listening to this too. So many people have said, knock on doors. There are so many opportunities waiting for you, and just don't say no. Go in it with a really positive attitude.
Absolutely. I think, I spent the first 15 years of my career working in public relations, and that was literally picking up the phone, calling a journalist and saying, "Hi, please talk to me. Can I tell you about my client? Or can I ask you not to write about my client? Or, could I introduce you to someone?" It's all about creating your network and tapping into that as much as possible, and just being really, really hungry. Keep going at it. It's a relentless kind of exercise. Nothing is going to land in your lap. So you need to make your own success.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Lisa, and for sharing your story. You've taught me and the audience so much about founding your own businesses and proving that money can be a force for good. And also what I'm specifically taking away as someone who is really passionate about geography is that geography and finance are not just finance, they aren't separate. And all the subjects that anyone learns now, they're all interconnected. Where we live and how we spend and what we invest all help shape the future of our planet. So to everyone watching, see you next time.
Thank you so much.